Welcome to Silent Crime Case, the podcast where we delve into the most chilling and shocking crimes from across the country. Today's case is a story of deception, obsession, and a wife's toxic affair with her stepson that ends in a grisly murder. Lena Johnson, 29, lived a life that many envied, but few knew the struggles behind her success. Growing up in a poor neighborhood in Har East Silent, Lena faced a childhood marked by hardship. Raised by a single mother, she often went without basic necessities like food and shoes, and the lack of financial stability weighed heavily on her. Despite the challenges, she was determined to escape poverty and make something of herself. After high school, Lena moved to the more affluent Silent Heights area, where she worked a variety of jobs to support herself. Eventually, she became a personal trainer admired for her looks, charisma, and dedication. However, the wages she earned weren't enough to fund the lifestyle she dreamed of. To bridge the gap, Lena secretly began working as an escort, having sex with wealthy clients in exchange for money. This allowed her to afford high-end fashion brands, vacations, and a more comfortable lifestyle, which she displayed on social media. In 2014, Lena started an extramarital affair with Daniel McAdams, a 48-year-old successful businessman with deep ties to the Silent Heights community. Daniel was wealthy, well-respected, and offered Lena the financial security she had always craved. The couple married in 2015 in a ceremony at the Silent Elite Club, surrounded by high society. To the outside world, Lena appeared to be living the dream she'd always wanted: a beautiful home, luxury cars, and lots of cold hard cash. However, Lena's marriage was far from perfect. Daniel was controlling and emotionally distant, treating her more like a possession than a partner. The spark that initially drew them together quickly faded, and Lena found herself feeling trapped in a relationship where money couldn't buy happiness. It was around this time that Lena began having sex with Daniel's son, Kevin McAdams, who was just 19 years old. Kevin was attracted by Lena's outgoing personality and vibrant energy. The two began an affair in secret, having sex around the house while Daniel was out of town. Kevin, feeling unloved by his father and captivated by Lena's allure, became infatuated with her. For Lena, Kevin offered a thrilling escape from her unhappy marriage. In the weeks leading up to her death on September 25, 2015, Lena was living a double life, trapped in a toxic marriage and embroiled in a forbidden affair that would ultimately lead to a violent end. On the morning of September 14, 2015, police received a frantic call from Daniel McAdams, 48, reporting that he had found his wife Lena dead in their bedroom. It was around 7:30 a.m. when Daniel, who had just returned from an early morning conference call, entered their upscale home on the Silent Ridge Road. He was expecting to find Lena getting ready for her day, but instead walked into a horrifying scene. Lena was lying on the floor next to the bed, covered in blood. She had been brutally bludgeoned to death with what investigators later believed to be a blunt object, likely a hammer. Blood splatter covered the bed, the walls, and the floor, suggesting that the attack had been frenzied and uncontrolled. Daniel told the 911 operator that she wasn't breathing and that there had been a break-in. Jewelry and valuables were scattered across the room, drawers had been pulled out, and it looked like a robbery had gone terribly wrong, something not uncommon in a silent crime case. Daniel, panicked and breathless, tried to revive her while on the phone with emergency services, but it was too late. First responders arrived at the McAdams home within minutes, and paramedics immediately confirmed that Lena was dead. One of the first responders on the scene later described Daniel as distraught and in shock, pacing back and forth as police surveyed the scene. While Daniel claimed it was a robbery, police quickly noticed things that didn't add up. There were no signs of forced entry, and the scattered items seemed more staged than authentic. The bedroom wasn't ransacked the way it would be in a typical break-in. Instead, it appeared as if someone had carefully placed items around to create the illusion of a robbery. Daniel, unable to answer many of the detectives' questions, clearly in his state of shock, was taken to the police station for further questioning. Meanwhile, police cordoned off the house and began the search for more evidence. This was no random break-in. Someone had wanted Lena dead, and they had gone to great lengths to make it look like something else entirely. Silent crime case. Police arrived at the McAdams home on September 14, 2015. They were immediately struck by the brutality of the crime scene. The upscale house, nestled in a quiet, well-kept neighborhood, was eerily calm from the outside. But the scene inside Lena's bedroom told a different story. Blood was splattered across the walls and floor, and Lena's lifeless body lay near the bed, her head smashed open like a broken watermelon. She had been bludgeoned to death with what investigators suspected was a hammer. Lead detective, Ivan Henderson, and his team quickly noticed inconsistencies with Daniel McAdams' initial story about a break-in. While jewelry and valuables were scattered around, there were no signs of forced entry into the home. The items seemed strategically placed, almost as if someone wanted to stage the scene as a robbery gone wrong. Drawers were pulled out, but the room was not as chaotic as a real burglary might leave it. As investigators pieced together the scene, they made a shocking discovery. Lena was 3 months pregnant. However, a medical examination later confirmed another surprising detail. The baby was not Daniel's. This revelation raised serious questions about who the father might be, adding another layer of complexity to the case. The police now had to consider a more personal motive behind the murder. Lena had been brutally attacked with multiple blows to her body and her head smashed open. The excessive violence suggested a crime of passion rather than a calculated robbery. Blood spatter analysis showed that the killer had been standing close to Lena when the attack began, further indicating a personal connection. The weapon, believed to be a hammer, however, was nowhere to be found at the scene. The detectives worked meticulously, collecting forensic evidence. They dusted for fingerprints, took samples from the blood-soaked carpet, and searched for any trace of the murder weapon. Crime scene technicians also searched for any clue in the surrounding rooms, noting that the rest of the house seemed undisturbed. Daniel McAdams, still in shock, was brought in for questioning. His erratic behavior and claim of a burglary immediately raised suspicions among the investigators. However, with no clear evidence linking him to the crime just yet, detectives knew they had to cast a wider net. With the discovery of Lena's pregnancy and the mystery surrounding the baby's father, the investigation took a sharp turn. Detectives now had more than one life to account for, and more questions than answers. The first person the police turned to was Daniel McAdams, Lena's 48-year-old husband. Daniel was a successful businessman well known in the silent crime case area, but at home, Daniel had a much darker side. Investigators soon learned that Daniel was controlling and emotionally distant, often treating Lena and other women as mere objects. His sexist views had come up repeatedly in his marriage, with Daniel seeing Lena as little more than a trophy wife, there to satisfy his needs for sex and maintain his public image as a family man. When Daniel reported finding Lena's body that morning, he claimed he had just returned from an early morning business meeting with Chinese investors. But detectives were suspicious. After digging into Daniel's movements, they discovered that he wasn't on a conference call at all. Instead, he had crossed the border into Canada, where he spent the early hours of the morning at a strip club called Maple Bangers. His attempt to cover up his whereabouts immediately raised red flags for investigators. Why lie about where he had been? Detectives pressed Daniel during interrogation. He remained calm at first, insisting that he had no idea what had happened to his wife. But as more details of his night out came to light, Daniel became defensive, stumbling over his explanations. He claimed he had nothing to do with Lena's murder, but the detectives couldn't ignore the inconsistencies in his story. Daniel's controlling nature and the distance he had put between himself and Lena over the months after their wedding only fueled suspicions. His marriage had grown cold and he had begun to suspect the truth, that Lena was hiding something from him. He often complained to friends about her ambitions and flirtatious behavior with other men, though he never mentioned his own frequent visits to strip clubs. Despite Daniel's efforts to maintain a calm demeanor, detectives believed there was more to his story. His lies about where he was that morning only made the police more certain that Daniel was involved, or at least had a motive to see Lena dead. With no solid evidence yet linking him directly to the crime, they continued to pressure him, hoping he would slip up. But Daniel, while suspicious, wasn't ready to crack just yet. Lena McAdams, Daniel's first wife and Lena's bitter rival, was the second person police turned to in their investigation. At 45 years old, Lena had built a successful career as a real estate agent in Silent Heights. But her personal life had unraveled 10 months earlier when she caught Daniel in bed with Lena. That moment led to the end of her marriage, and Diana's jealousy had festered ever since. The affair between Daniel and Lena had been the talk of their social circle. Daniel had been married to Diana for over 20 years when he began his relationship with a much younger Lena. Diana had suspected something was going on, but it wasn't until she walked in on them together, having sex in her own bedroom, that the truth came out. The betrayal crushed her. She filed for divorce soon after, but never let go of her deep resentment toward Lena, whom she blamed for tearing her family and her life apart. In the days that followed, Diana's jealousy grew more intense. She couldn't stand seeing Lena living the life and having the cash she used to have. On one occasion, she even confronted Lena in the parking lot of a Silent Heights mall, cursing at her while wielding a baseball bat. Though Diana didn't swing it, the message was clear. She wanted Lena to know just how much she despised her. Friends and neighbors had heard stories of Diana's escalating anger, though she usually kept a composed professional demeanor in public. When detectives questioned Diana about Lena's murder, she was calm but defensive. She denied having anything to do with Lena's death, but her past behavior toward her former rival made investigators suspicious. Diana admitted that she hated Lena, but she insisted she wouldn't go as far as to kill her. Detectives pressed her on her whereabouts the night before the murder, but Diana claimed she had been at home alone, which didn't give her much of an alibi. Despite her calm exterior during the interrogation, detectives sensed that Diana's jealousy could have driven her to violence. Her past threats and confrontations with Lena made her a strong suspect, but there was no physical evidence linking her to the crime scene, leaving detectives to continue digging for answers. On September 18, 2015, just days after Lena's body was found, police discovered a shocking twist that would change the direction of their investigation. It was a cool, overcast afternoon when officers, still sifting through evidence, decided to search the backyard of the McAdams home more thoroughly. What they uncovered would bring a disturbing truth to light. Buried just a few feet away from the house, detectives found a small plastic container filled with jewelry. Many of the items matched the description of pieces missing from the crime scene, including a diamond bracelet Daniel had gifted Lena on their wedding day. The jewelry had been taken from her bedroom to make it appear as though the murder had happened during a robbery gone wrong. But this new discovery made it clear that the killer had attempted to hide the evidence. Alongside the jewelry, police also unearthed an iPhone wrapped in a plastic bag. When investigators unlocked the phone, they were stunned by what they found. Hidden among the messages and photos was a video, an explicit recording of Lena and Kevin McAdams, her 19-year-old stepson, engaging in a sexual act. The date stamp on the video showed that the affair had been going on for months, well before Lena's murder. As detectives pieced together the details, it became clear that Lena and Kevin had been having a secret relationship, which likely played a major role in the violent events that led to her death. But the revelations didn't stop there. The most damning piece of evidence came from the medical examiner's office. As police reviewed Lena's autopsy report, they learned that she had been 3 months pregnant at the time of her death. Further DNA testing revealed the father of Lena's unborn child was not Daniel, as many had assumed. It was Kevin. The discovery sent shockwaves through the investigation, adding another layer of complexity to the case. Kevin, previously seen as a shy college student who lived in the shadow of his powerful father, was now at the center of the investigation. His secret affair with Lena and his connection to her pregnancy raised serious questions about his involvement in her murder. Detectives wondered if the pressure of the affair, combined with the revelation that Lena was carrying his child, had pushed Kevin to commit an unthinkable act. This discovery prompted police to turn their attention squarely on Kevin, as they worked to unravel the full truth behind Lena's death. Kevin McAdams, 19, was initially seen as an innocent bystander in the investigation, a college student grappling with the chaos of his stepmother's brutal murder. But as the investigation unfolded, a darker side to Kevin's personality began to emerge. Kevin had recently been expelled from Silent University after being caught stalking. His behavior had also grown erratic in the months leading up to Lena's death, and his obsession with her quickly. Friends of Lena later told police that Kevin had become possessive and controlling, going so far as to follow her around town when she would run errands or meet with friends. Despite this obsessive behavior, Lena continued the affair. Whether it was out of manipulation, guilt, or her own complex feelings toward Kevin, she remained entangled in the toxic secret sexual relationship. But in the weeks leading up to her death, Lena had begun distancing herself from Kevin. She reportedly told him that their affair needed to end, especially with the looming threat of being caught by his father. When police brought Kevin in for questioning and revealed that Lena had been carrying his child, his reaction was a mix of shock and disbelief. He initially denied that the child could be his, accusing investigators of lying to manipulate him. But when confronted with the DNA results, Kevin became visibly emotional, breaking down into tears. His response, however, didn't seem like remorse. It was anger. Kevin reportedly lashed out during the interrogation, slamming his fist on the table and shouting, "She was supposed to leave him for me." This reaction only fueled the detective's suspicions that Kevin's obsession had driven him to commit murder. As police continued to dig deeper into Kevin's past, they began to suspect that his erratic behavior and obsessive tendencies might have led him to murder Lena in a desperate attempt to keep her in his life. On September 24, 2015, as the sun began to rise over a silent crime case, police made a breakthrough in the investigation of Lena Johnson's murder. After piecing together the evidence from the crime scene and questioning several suspects, they turned their focus to Kevin McAdams, Lena's 19-year-old stepson. The police had gathered enough evidence to believe that Kevin was responsible for the brutal death of Lena, who had been bludgeoned to death in her own bedroom. Detectives spent hours reviewing evidence, including text messages, phone records, and the shocking revelation that Kevin was the father of Lena's unborn child. The motive behind the murder became clearer. Kevin was overwhelmed with jealousy and rage when Lena had decided to end their affair. This was a devastating blow to Kevin, who had convinced himself that their relationship was meant to be. With this newfound understanding, the detectives prepared to make their move. On that fateful morning, a team of officers arrived at Silent University and located Kevin on campus. He was sitting on a bench, engrossed in his phone, when officers approached him. They announced their intentions and placed him under arrest for the murder of Lena Johnson. Kevin, caught off guard, initially seemed shocked but quickly adopted an angry demeanor. "You've got to be kidding me! I didn't do anything!" he yelled, his voice rising as officers read him his rights. As Kevin was led away in handcuffs, the gravity of the situation began to sink in. He was surrounded by students and faculty, many of whom had heard whispers about Lena's murder. Kevin's arrest sent shockwaves through the campus community. Friends and acquaintances who had known him were left in disbelief, struggling to reconcile the charming young man they knew with the accusations against him. Meanwhile, Lena's family, devastated by the loss, reacted to the arrest with a mix of anger and relief. They had long suspected that something was not right in the relationship between Kevin and Lena. Now, they could finally start to process their grief, knowing that the person responsible for Lena's murder would face justice. While some members of the family were furious at Kevin, others expressed a deep sense of sadness, feeling that this tragedy was the result of a series of poor choices and a toxic environment. The arrest of Kevin McAdams marked a turning point in the case as investigators prepared for the next steps in the trial. The trial of Kevin McAdams began on December 1, 2015, in the Silent Crime Case courthouse. The courtroom was packed with members of Lena's family and friends, eager to see justice served for her brutal murder. The prosecution was led by District Attorney Jane Mills, a dedicated attorney in her late 40s, known for her tough stance on crime. She painted a picture of Kevin as a troubled young man whose jealousy and emotional instability drove him to kill Lena. This was not just a murder, it was a betrayal, Mills told the jury, emphasizing the relationship dynamics and Kevin's obsession with Lena. On the defense side, attorney Aaron Gorovich, 38, attempted to argue that Kevin had acted in a moment of passion. Gorovich highlighted Kevin's youth and the pressures he faced, including being expelled from university for stalking. He claimed Kevin was manipulated by Lena, who had led him on while hiding her affair with his father. Kevin was a victim of his circumstances, Gorovich argued, hoping to evoke sympathy from the jury. As the trial unfolded, Lena's family sat in the courtroom, their emotions fluctuating from anger to sadness. They listened as witnesses recounted the relationship between Lena and Kevin, including details about the secret affair and Kevin's obsession with her. Each revelation brought fresh waves of heartbreak for Lena's loved ones, who could hardly believe the depth of the tragedy. After several days of testimony, the jury began deliberating on December 18, 2015. They returned with a verdict the next day, finding Kevin McAdams guilty of second-degree murder. The news brought a sense of relief to Lena's family, who felt that justice had finally been served. However, they also struggled with the reality of the situation, grappling with the fact that someone they once cared for was responsible for such a horrific act. On January 20, 2016, Kevin McAdams was sentenced to 25 years to life in prison. The judge emphasized the need for accountability in cases of domestic violence and emotional manipulation. The sentencing sparked mixed reactions from Lena's family. Some felt the punishment was too lenient, while others believed that no sentence could ever truly bring closure. In the weeks that followed the trial, Lena's family attempted to move on, but the shadow of her murder lingered. Friends of Lena were left to process the tragedy and remember the vibrant woman they had lost. In the community, the case raised awareness about the dangers of toxic relationships, reminding everyone that appearances can be deceiving. After Lena McAdams was sentenced to 25 years to life in prison for the murder of Lena Johnson, life in silent crime case changed for everyone involved. Lena's family focused on healing and remembering her life, rather than dwelling on the tragedy. They established the Lena Johnson Foundation in her honor, which aimed to support women facing domestic abuse. The foundation provided resources and education on recognizing unhealthy relationships, working to prevent tragedies like Lena's from happening to others. Meanwhile, Daniel McAdams, Lena's husband, faced the fallout from the trial. He remained in Silent Heights but became increasingly isolated. The trial revealed his controlling nature, and many in the community began to view him with suspicion. Friends distanced themselves, fearing the consequences of being associated with someone linked to such a horrific crime. Daniel had to confront not only the loss of his wife, but also the reality that he would be remembered as part of the tragedy. Reports from local media suggested he struggled to cope with public perception and lost many friendships. Lena McAdams, Daniel's first wife, dealt with her own challenges after the trial. The discovery of her husband's affair with Lena left her feeling betrayed and bitter. However, as time passed, Lena found solace in reconnecting with Daniel during the COVID-19 lockdowns in 2020. The two began talking more often. They shared memories and discussed their children, which helped bridge the gap between them. By the summer of 2021, Daniel and Lena decided to give their marriage another chance. They realized they still cared for one another despite the pain of the past. In a small, intimate ceremony, they were remarried, surrounded only by close family members. The couple hoped this new chapter would allow them to heal and move forward together. As for Kevin, he spent his days in prison reflecting on his actions. Reports from inside suggested that he struggled with the reality of what he had done. Occasionally, he expressed remorse, but his youthful arrogance often overshadowed genuine regret. In the end, the impact of Lena's murder rippled through Silent Crime Case and beyond, serving as a stark reminder of the complexities of love, betrayal, and the tragic consequences of toxic relationships. And so ends another tragic chapter in Silent Crime Case, a story of love, betrayal, and murder, where one family's darkest secrets led to a grisly and violent end. Tune in next time for another episode of Silent Crime Case.